Hey everybody, it's B here, and we're finally kicking into really digging into some discussion videos and trying to understand exactly what's going to move forward with the Digimon TCG now that we have the full set 1.0 release. For those guys who are still not in the know, our first release in the West of the Digimon TCG is going to be split in two, sets 1 and 1.5, and they're going to encompass a mixture of the first 3 Japanese sets. So set 1 is going to have some set 1, 2, 3 cards as well as set 1.5, which means we're going to get a big diverse pool of different archetypes and things to try out. And you already know that I'm going to try my best to cover all the archetypes, but for now I kind of want to get a discussion going around understanding boss monsters. So specifically, what are boss monsters? Generally they're top end cards specific for an archetype, or sometimes just a strategy. Like aggression is a strategy, whereas I want to say, something that spams out a bunch of blockers or keeps your opponent's cards rested or is more like an archetype. And they generally close out the game or create a lockout board state that allows you to go on and win the game. There are edge cases where boss monsters are a bit different, but generally that's what they end up doing. It's your top end to what your strategy is, and usually they epitomize the core of the entire strategy. So a stalled boss monster, let's say, will have a really powerful ability that keeps all of your opponent's cards rested or tapped or anything like that. Or a really powerful aggressive one will have a bunch of security checks. This is kind of what we're getting into when we're figuring out what are boss monsters. If we look at different card games, these are things like Thunder Dragon Colossal. This one preventing your opponent from being able to search their deck, so creating a lockout state while also being a sizable boss monster himself. In Dragon Ball, something like Son Goku and Vegeta, Apex of Power, turning off your opponent's entire deck for a turn, as well as being able to right out kill them if it deals damage, which goes along well with the entire Invoker archetype that this boss monster is meant to be played in. The entire archetype is very control oriented, you're not very aggressive, odds are you're not taking away a lot of your opponent's life, so as opposed to chipping away at their life and giving them value turn after turn, you just take it all out in one single blow. In Pokemon, it's a little bit different because, they're basic Pokemon. You don't have to pay costs to play out most legendaries or boss monster type Pokemon. But if I had to say Pokemon, let's just pick Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia. The big creature that's at the heart of your strategy. Here we have ADP, which essentially buffs up the attacks of your entire squad. Then you use a different Pokemon, often Zacian, to be able to sweep your opponent's entire team afterwards. So this is that realm where we're getting into huge cards. All of these have either high stats, high cost, high attack damage, or a really powerful lockdown ability that leads them towards being a boss monster for that deck. So starter decks are a great place for us to look at, what are entry level boss monsters. Typically they get overpowered by what's in the main set, but they're a great entry point for us to understand, as far as the Digimon card game specifically, what we should be looking towards. So generally, like if we look at Wargreymon, level 6, it's got a large power at 1200, which is larger than most level 6s from what I've noticed at the different cards I've seen, and that's Red shtick. Red is big and powerful. They use big DP cards to be able to punch through, and then he has this trigger where for every 2 Digi-Evolutions under this Digimon, it gains security attack +1. So naturally, if you go up your Digi-Evolution chain, odds are you have 4 Digimon under him, so he has essentially security attack +2, which means he checks an additional 2 security checks when he goes and attacks. Huge, very aggressive leaning, and we can tell that that's what's Red trying to do. If we go towards Blue, Blue is more applying constant pressure while also stalling out your opponent. So here we have Metal Gurumon. When attacking once per turn, unsuspend this Digimon. So as opposed to attacking with a big attack, you're going to be attacking multiple times, and actually the Digi-Evolution sources below Metal Gurumon lend to a more go wide, attack multiple times whilst also stalling out your opponent. And then finally for yellow, we have Seraphimon. When attacking, one of your opponent's Digimon gets -4 KDP for the turn. So this is a constant source of pressure. There's some cards that are really big and one time will remove something on the board, but generally your boss monster, you want it to be something that's accruing a ton of value over and over and over again. So for Wargreymon, we have constant extra security checks. For Melgurumon, it's big attacks over and over and over again. For Seraphimon, we get essentially a bit of board clear or board cleanup every single attack. And we can see that the power level differentiates for every single deck based on what they want to do. So for Red, it's a very aggressive leaning. We have 1200, leaning all the way down to Seraphimon, which is a 10,000 power card. So it really depends on what the archetype's trying to do. not all boss monsters are created equal, and not all of them have the same power level, but based on what their archetype's trying to do, the skills usually mitigate for that. One thing that I do want to point out is the fact that because of the way Digi-Evolution sources work in Digimon, you can build your own boss monster. So there's some large, like level 6 vanilla creatures that I don't include, or some level 5 or 6s that don't have a ton of abilities. That's mostly because maybe there are cards in their Digi-Evolution sources that lend to turning them into boss monsters. So while I didn't include them here because I do not have that kind of game knowledge yet, it is something to keep in mind that this game is very flexible in what is a boss monster because of that aspect, and because you can turn any high level Digimon into something very gruesome if you have the right evolution sources. If we jump into set 1.0 though, let's look at every single color and see what kind of boss monsters are to give us an idea of what strategy you might be learning through. This could lend ourselves to understanding what deck you might want to pick up when the set actually comes out. So here we have War Greymon, 1100 power. When Digi-evolving, this Digimon gains security attack +1. And then this Digimon doesn't activate security skills on options cards when it checks, which is absolutely huge because it means you get to punch in. Generally, red Digi-evolution sources give power boosts, which means this War Greymon is probably going to be 12k, 13k, so on and so forth. The thing being that options are usually very, very powerful when they're security checked, oftentimes being just straight up removal. So War Greymon is safe in that if you have enough of a boost based on your Digi sources, you know War Greymon's going to be able to get all of his security checks because he won't die to any of the option cards, and most likely is bigger than almost anything he's going to hit in your opponent's security. Moving on over, this is one of the only, if not the only level 5 that I included, and it's just because his effects are very jarring, but gives you an idea of, you know, if you weren't going the entire way up the chain to a level 6 and potentially a level 7, there are level 5s that can fill that role based on what they do. Here, it's security attack +2, which is huge. It means that you can clear off 3 securities from your opponent right away. But however, it does have a stall that you lose 3 memory if you use it. That's a big pushback. I don't know if you would actually play this card, but it just gives you an idea that there are big, powerful cards that don't necessarily have to go all the way to the top end at level 6. And then finally, we have Gallantmon. When Digi-evolving, if you have a red Tamer card in play, delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 6,000 power or less. Removal is amazing, but having one-time removal does not make a boss monster. Here we also have, however, an attacking that you get to trash one of your opponent's security cards for every 10 cards in their trash. So this is dual purpose. One, it means that the later the game goes, the more and more you're going to be able to proc off this ability. But also second, this is kind of like a counter top end, right? Let's say you're playing against a purple deck that likes to fill up their trash with a ton of cards. What Gallantmon's saying is that I'm going to punish the fact that you keep filling up your trash by being able to clear out your security for free, which is absolutely massive. Jumping over to blue, we have another Metal Garurumon. When attacking, play one level 4 or lower Digi-evolution card under this card as another Digimon without paying its energy memory cost. So this is pretty big. It means you just get to free play, and there are a couple of Digi-evolutions where say like when this card comes into play, restand another card, which means you can get multiple swings, but it has extra utility because you will get your on-play triggers. Then we have Metal Seadramon. On play, return up to 2 of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon to their hand. So now we're setting back our opponent's tempo. It's not just single removal, it's you're 2-for-1ing your opponent in terms of bounce removal. Additionally, on your turn, this Digimon can't be blocked by your opponent's Digimon with no Digi-evolution cards. Blue leans very, removing your opponent's Digi-evolution sources, especially in the first couple of sets, which means that this card takes advantage of that, and this is one of those archetypal boss monsters we were talking about. The archetype wants to remove Digi-evolution sources, and your benefit for being able to do that is that your Metal Seadramon is going to be able to attack in unprevented, which is absolutely huge. And finally, we have a Leopardmon. When Digi-evolving, you may play one level 4 lower Digi-evolution of one of your Digimon cards as another Digimon without paying its memory cost. So again, very similar to what we saw with Metal Garurumon, but now we see as a on Digivolve. And then on your turn, all your level 4 or lower Digimon gain jamming. And that means that they can't be deleted in battles against security Digimon, which is huge, especially considering that maybe going for game, you want to attack with a couple of weenies to clear off the last couple of security checks. Well, what Leopardmon does is prevent your little weenies to be able to die, and then you're able to close in with something bigger afterwards, which is pretty massive. It means that if you're trying to go for tempo, you're not going to lose simply because your entire board's getting cleared. Jumping into yellow, we have the Set Seraphimon. When Digi-evolving, trigger recovery +1. So you're essentially gaining health by putting the top of your deck into your security, which is pretty massive. Life gain can be pretty relevant depending on the card game. So your ability to start recovering really helps, especially considering that Seraphimon actually gains security attack +1 for every 3 life you have. Again, feeding into his own engine and feeding into what yellow wants to do, which is doing things like recovering, managing your health, and playing a more control-oriented game. Now we have Magnadramon. On play, if you have 3 or fewer security cards, trigger recovery +2. So now we're getting 2 health. So this is really more of a fallback. Hey, have we fallen back quite a bit away? Are we about to lose? Okay, you know what? I'm going to gain 2 life. And then when attacking, you may play 1 level 3 Digimon card from your hand without paying its memory cost, getting back that tempo. Magnadramon is very much a tempo-oriented card. You're saying, okay, we've set ourselves back. We're going to set ourselves into a position where we're not going to die right away, on top of being able to start building more Digimon and pushing into our opponent even faster. And we wrap yellow up with Kentarosmon? Yeah, all right, we'll go with that. That when he digivolves, up to 5 of your opponent's Digimon gain security attack -2, which means they security check 2 less. Absolutely massive until the end of your opponent's next turn. So, you know, this is very floodgatey. If I was going to say like there are floodgate cards, this Digimon very much serves that role in that you almost guarantee your opponent's not going to be able to clear out your security come their next turn. On top of, on deletion, when your opponent's Digimon gets a -11 DP for the turn, huge. He leaves and your opponent doesn't want to deal with it. That's great. They're going to probably lose something else as well. Now we're going to jump into green. So this is the first color we look into that's not the first 3 from the starter decks. There are 6 colors in the game: green, red, blue, yellow, purple, and black. So green is the first one that we see outside of that. Then here we have Rosemon. On your opponent's turn, when an opponent's Digimon attacks a player, if this Digimon is suspended, suspend one of your opponent's Digimon. Very stall oriented. This will go very well with anything like Tamers or any Digivolution sources that say, you know what, your opponent is going to have to slow down. Very stally, and it combines really well with another boss monster here in Puppetmon. On play, suspend one of your opponent's Digimon. During your opponent's next unsuspend phase, none of your opponent's Digimon can unsuspend. So now we're really stally, which gives us an idea of what green wants to do, right? Green wants to prevent our opponent from really playing the game while we're punching in, while we're putting in pressure. And these 2 boss monsters lend themselves very well to that. Additionally, Puppetmon has the bonus of gaining you a memory when it swings, meaning that you're able to extend your tempo while you're holding your opponent down. Next, we have Hercules Kabuterimon. Piercing, which means that when he attacks over a Digimon, it actually does a security check after that. And then at an end of attack, which is twice per turn, very interesting. You know, I've played a lot of card games that were once per turn, but specifically declaring twice per turn is a huge keyword. It's very interesting. And here we can unsuspend the Digimon by decreasing your memory by 3. So if you want to close out the game, this gives you the ability that if your opponent made a big play, well, now you can go into Kabuterimon, and let's say you have 6 memory left, then you're able to swing in 2 more times with it, 2 more piercings, which means you're able to clear board as well as doing the additional security checks. And finally, we have Rusty Tyrannomon. Your turn when you have a green Tamer card in play. So now we're seeing cards that interact well with Tamer cards, which makes sense, right? Tamers saw more relevancy in set 2 and 3. So we're seeing that in our set 1 because we're a mix of the first 3 sets. On your turn, when this Digimon deletes one of your opponent's Digimon in battle and survives, suspend one of your opponent's Digimon. So again, suspend. We want to freeze our opponent. We want to prevent them from doing things while we're punching in, giving us a good idea of what green's trying to do. Now we jump into black. We have Wargreymon, we have Blocker, and Reboot. So you can apply Threat and then be a blocker because Reboot allows them to reset at the end of your turn. Okay, so we have a repetitive large blocker. Gives us a good idea of what black wants to do, right? Black wants to be stally in a reverse sense. Instead of stalling our opponent, we want to make sure that we have the defense to be able to stop what our opponent's doing. Here we have Diaboromon. So I know he's white. Like, I'm fairly certain he's a white card. However, he plays in a black-oriented deck, and he only comes into play with a black evolution cost. So for the sake of talking about colors, I'm grouping him with the black boss monsters. Although, you know, I could group him with the whites later on, but there's a very specific reason I've opted not to. So we'll see when we get to the white cards. So here we have Diaboromon that says when he's attacking, you may play 1 Diaboromon token without paying its memory cost, which is a 3k token effectively. And then, if it would be deleted in battle, you may delete one of your other Diaboromon to prevent it from dying instead. So effectively what's happening here is that you're creating a bunch of tokens, and then if your opponent wants to try and KO this, remove it, however they want to do it, they're either gonna have to clear out the tokens first, or have Diaboromon clear the tokens himself using his defensive ability. And it's not once per turn, which means you are going to have to clear off all the tokens. And finally, we have Machine Dramon. Blocker, again, blocker. Showing us very much that Black wants to be blocker oriented. Black wants to make sure that they're able to defend and apply pressure while also holding back. Especially with the on-play trigger, which digivolves 2 of your opponent's Digimon for 2 sources. This effectively setting your opponent's resources back down. You also have to take note that if there's no more sources, you just kind of stop there. You're not straight up KOing the Digimon. But there's a lot of value in being able to set your opponent back and then being able to apply your tempo. Again, a very defense-oriented way of playing, of applying pressure on your opponent. Then we go into purple, and holy heck, does purple have a lot of what I would signify boss monsters. So we're just going to jump right through them. Here we have Piedmon, which has Retaliation. When this Digimon is deleted after losing a battle, delete the Digimon it was battling. So Revenge, if you guys play Dragon Ball, very same line. Also has an on play, they may play 2 level 4 or lower purple Digimon from the trash without paying their memory cost. And then any on play effects on Digimon played with this effect don't activate. This is a huge tempo swing, especially since I believe in purple, 2 level 4s are 2 blockers, which is absolutely massive for the deck. It's one of the best tempo plays in the game and one of the best defensive plays in the game, especially considering that you're getting out for as your boss monster. So you're doing what your strategy wants to do. You're getting out a beefy card that's able to now load up a bunch of defenses, which is absolutely massive. And then we have Metal Gurumon. When attacking, you may play 1 purple level 3 card from your trash without paying its memory cost. Any on play effects on Digimon don't activate. So again, what does purple want to do? Well, clearly purple wants to start filling up its trash and then reoccurring them. And this Metal Gurumon allows you to fetch a specific piece that you're looking for. Then we have Bizomon, a absolutely sexy secret rare. While you have 10 or more cards in your trash, your Impmon can Digivolve into this card in your hand for a memory cost of 4, ignoring this card's Digi-Evolution requirements. Impmon, I'm not too sure if it's a level 2 or level 3, but effectively allowing you to cheat the chain if you fill up your trash, which, hey, purple wants to do. And then when Digi-Evolving, you get to delete one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. Now, this is a boss monster in that it's a big beefy card that gets cheated out. And this is another way that we can identify if the deck is really using a boss monster. You're doing what your archetype wants to do. And in this case, purple wants to fill up its trash. And as a bonus, you get to cheat out this big beefy card, which very much aligns itself with boss monster status, considering that that's something you can do over and over and over again if you have more Impmons. Then we have Venom Myotismon, security attack +1. So already there we have very powerful keywords. Anything that has a ton of keywords can very much be considered a boss monster itself as well. But it also has that on the opponent's turn, when one of your opponent's Digimon becomes suspended, gain 1 memory. Which punishes your opponent for doing what they're trying to do. You're applying constant tax, which can be tough for your opponent to deal with. And finally, we have Lilithmon. When Digivolving, if you have 10 or more cards in your trash, you most likely do, you may return 2 purple option cards from your trash to your hand, and once per turn, when you use an option card, gain 2 memory. So here, if we look at all the other ones being very Digimon oriented, Lilithmon is great in that it leans into an option strategy. Now, if your deck is leaning more control and leaning more towards using option cards, not only are you going to get benefits from them, where every single turn you're going to gain memory, but also on top of that, you're getting option cards back on play, which means that you're able to refill on more gas, that you're able to extend your plays and get more control aspects that you're looking for. And finally, white. White is like the multicolor, essentially, oftentimes. We've seen Diaboromon wasn't a multicolor, but oftentimes they lend the space where they're able to be played within 2 different colors. Here we have Millenniumon, a level 7, mind you. So oftentimes, exclusively level 7s also tend to be white. We'll see what future sets, but hugely powerful that when it digivolves, you get to return one of your opponent's Digimon to the bottom of their deck. So bottom decking as opposed to deleting is pretty massive. For a lot of cards, it could prevent a proc of a couple of abilities. It doesn't go back to your opponent's hand. Bottom decking can definitely be more annoying than going into the trash or hand, depending on the deck. And then on deletion, if this card had any devolution cards, which means you didn't just pay 15 for it, you may play this card from your trash without paying its memory cost, which means it's really hard to remove, and you get that recursion, meaning that you get a big beefy attacker to stick around, which makes him tough to remove. And yeah, that's it. There's no other boss monsters to talk about. That's pretty much everything. No, obviously not. If we're going to talk boss monsters, we're going to talk about the premium boss monster in set 1.0, Omnimon. Probably the biggest hype card in the game, the highest base power card in the game at 1500, making it an absolute tank So this one for red or blue. When Digi-evolving, choose one of your opponent's Digimon. Delete all of your opponent's Digimon that share a name with it. So if your opponent's board has a bunch of Agumon, every single Agumon gets cleared. So it's like a targeted board wipe, which is really weird, but really strong considering that a lot of decks use the same kinds of Digimon over and over again as part of their engines. And then when attacking, it can unsuspend itself by returning one of its level 6 Digi-Evolution cards to the hand. So this is a benefit of saying, hey, you went through up the entire chain to be able to get out Omnimon. For your reward, here's you being able to unsuspend, which means 2 huge 15k attacks. Odds are, outside of an option card that can delete this, you're not getting dealt with. It will punch through every single security card, making it extremely powerful and giving it a ton of reason to being the helm of so many blue and red Turbo Omnimon decks. But that was it. Those were effectively, I might have missed some. You know what? That's very possible. But overall, I covered just about most, if not all, boss monsters. And that's what they're really great at. They're great at giving you the idea of what a strategy wants to do. We saw green. Green wants to suspend your opponent's cards and then keep applying pressure. We saw that black was very blocker oriented, preventing your opponent from doing things. Or we looked at purple. A lot of trash interaction there. So boss monsters do 2 things. They're very good at showing you what an archetype wants to do. And they're the premium, the best cards at doing the epitome of what that archetype's trying to do, whether it be recurring, whether it be applying pressure, whether it be stalling out your opponent. They're so strong at doing that very specific thing, which makes them a ton of fun to use. Mind you, boss monsters aren't necessary, and not every deck needs to run a boss monster. It's very specific to every deck's needs, so it's up to you as a deck builder to evaluate, will my deck benefit from going all the way to the top and using a boss monster? With that said, what's your favorite boss monster? I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be a normie. I'm gonna build an Omnimon deck. Is it my favorite boss monster? I don't know. I'd have to think about that one. But in terms of which boss monster leads me to wanting to build a deck right away, it's gotta be Omnimon. I'm a normie, I know it. So whichever one you guys want, let me know in the comments down below. Hey, if you guys like these kinds of discussion videos, I'm looking to jump more and more into Digimon content as we ramp up into set 1 and way more once the set releases. Give it a thumbs up. Hey, thumbs down if you guys didn't like the video. But if you want to catch more of my content and more of any of these type of discussion videos, deck profiles, anything, subscription buttons down below. With that said, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Ciao.